Hey, well, first of all, I'd like to say, and I ASP are gonna find me, because I want to be a part of this fucking dumb wannabe tennis tour.
You know, I think they got his testicles so far up their mouths that this is bullshit, you know?
I'm not thinking about that right now. I'm just thinking about having won the world title and hopefully trying to win another one someday. You just drop in and just smack the drop down, say, bah!
Well, I'll tell you, Stu, I did battle some humongous waves.
Oh, just the paper, please?
Oh, stuff looks good on it. Not bad.
Ain't that swell? With Jed and Vaughn.
Oh, those guys are back!
Get a haircut.
I'm loving the set too.
Yeah, this is my living room in Merseyvale, Baggetville, whatever it is.
Where do you live?
Just west of Wardell, man. You know where Wardell is?
West of... Oh, I'd love to say yes. Explain it to me.
It's mud crabbing country up kind of southwest of Ballina, so inland of Southwall. You ever surf Southwall?
Yes. What a wave.
Hell joint. It's yeah, the closest joint to me, I guess.
West of Wardell. Sounds like an album title.
Mate, you be right at home out here. It's very much a, you know, bit of a floodplain, definitely a low socioeconomic bogan backwater with there's a big indigenous mission around the corner, Cabbage Tree Island, which actually just went under during the floods and has been fully condemned. So they're living on the golf course now, the crew from the mission, in a bunch of pods. And yeah, it's you know, people in loose fitting singlets with bits of back hair and kind of limping around the joint. But love Wardell. It's like, and everyone's got a mullet, it seems, or like it's yeah, it's a gritty joint. It's like a different planet to Byron, but it's really close to Byron.
Sounds like the beefs would fit right in up there.
Yeah, man. If you want to do a gig down at Wardell Core, you're more than welcome. They have this mental kind of post-flood infrastructure that they set up, and they do some mental gigs down there. Yeah, it's a fucking hell joint, man. It's actually like as core, as bogan core, as beef core as it gets.
I am in Yallingup at the moment. We moved over to Perth, and we've got a little shack in Yarls, but I went down to Smith's Beach for a swim this morning. After our namesake, I'm a Smith, you're a Smith. I don't know if we're related somewhere along the line, but...
Yeah, I mean, it's more than possible. There's a lot of Smithies around in the central western New South Wales, that's for sure. I don't know if we got as far west as Yallingup, but good on you for going and baptizing yourself in the sacred brine, mate.
There's something about getting in the ocean, isn't there? I mean, it'll wash off a hangover. It'd rip you out of the casket if you were on your way out, I reckon. There's something about the salt electrolytes. You explain it to me, Smitty. What is it?
I don't know. I don't know exactly what the mystical qualities of the ocean is. Yeah, I don't know. There was some article I saw in Tracks ages ago talking about exactly what you were just mentioning, just some like tripped out ions and electrons and just the biochemistry of the ocean and how it syncs up with what's inside of us. But yeah, I mean, we're 90% water, aren't we? And you know, yeah, it's charged up in there. You know that, like, holy smokes, it's a living entity. The ocean gives life to this planet and so many creatures both in it and on land. So it's got to be something in it, Smithy.
I read that article about those fishies dying in the river recently, and that really tripped me out due to low oxygen levels in the Murray. That is some sad shit, isn't it?
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up because I've actually been to Menindee and reported for News Limited about just what's going on out there with the Murray-Darling River. And, you know, I was there not for a fish kill, but I was there not that long after one and was staying with one of the big wool farmers out there who was part of, I think, the first viral clip to come out of there, just holding on to like a fucking prehistoric Murray cod that was dead, along with millions of others. And yeah, it's tripped out there, man. I don't exactly know how it works, but I mean, it's worth talking about here because it's a gnarly issue, and it really applies to everyone on the East Coast. And that is that you've got a lot of cotton farming that goes on the Murray-Darling River, and that's affected the flow of the river. And those cotton farming is such a water-intensive practice, and so much of it goes into making fast fashion, which is the raw products, I guess, exported to China or elsewhere to be made into fashion, and then essentially they're valid for what's the fashion cycle, like 3 months or some shit, and then it just goes in landfill or goes to Vinnie's. And that's our
if it's one of my left socks, probably lasts about 2 days, I reckon.
Exactly. So I mean, that's the lifeblood of the East Coast. It's kind of the lifeblood of the country in a lot of ways. That's our food bowl. It's like the Murray-Darling is to Australia what the Mekong is to Southeast Asia. So yeah, just taking big risks with it, allowing very wealthy business interests to dam the water upstream and choke communities like Wilcannia and Menindee downstream.
So that's what's happening. That's where the oxygen levels are dropping, because they're choking up the river in certain areas.
Mate, not exactly. I think it's a factor. I don't know if they're super sure about what's doing it. I think it's to do with algae, the algal blooms that happen after flood events. But because the river system's been so fucked with in all these different ways, like who knows what the downstream effects of that are, so to speak. But yeah, you'll love this. Is an epic John Williamson song, which I might play in this episode right now, called
I love that.
Pigs in the River. And it's like his Hurricane, Bob Dylan had that track, that super political track. This is as like raw and angry and iconic as John Williamson gets, in my opinion. It's a fucking ripper of a track.
I haven't heard it before, but I'm keen as. Get it on.
Yeah, it's a little bit obscure, I guess. When you go after mondo business interests like that, you're not necessarily going to get mainstream radio play, but it's definitely not in that country, that country genre. It's more of just a rousing kind of protest song. It's a fucking, it's so classic. But man, talk to us about your band, The Beefs. And I know that the lineage you're descending from and very much a part of is the pub rock lineage. And it's a favorite of mine. It's a favorite of yours. It's very much relates to what I was just talking about, that John Williamson track. But yeah, talk to us about Australian pub rock and the imprint it left on you.
It's a long story, I guess, explaining where it all came from for me personally. I think it started with my stepdad's record collection. He had everything from Aussie rock to Hendrix, Zeppelin, Robin Trower, Neil Young, Bob Dylan, all of that in this big wooden box. And we would chuck those records on from when we were 3 or 4 years old. So I think it really started there for me. He had an album called Tracks, Australian Made, which had an assortment of Aussie classics on there.
Based on the film, that film Tracks was related to?
I can't remember. I think it was like a series of albums that they put out. They were basically mixtapes called TRAX. You could dig them up, I'm sure, somewhere. And there was a few Midnight Oil tracks on there and stuff. And I think the political side of Midnight Oil, that they had something to say as well as play good music, really caught my attention when I was young. And I started playing guitar from around that age. And I played a lot of acoustic guitar growing up. And then I'm like, oh, this isn't really sitting with me, resonating with me. Sort of, it's not a true reflection of my personality. I grew up in a pretty rough town in Port Lincoln, and around a lot of colourful characters around the coast. And And that's when I really started, probably 5-6 years ago, making music that I felt was a lot more in line with the way I acted, thought, talked, and behaved. And that's really where the beefs were born. I was lucky enough to work with some pretty good musicians, Matty Corby, Julian Sudek, Kieran Callanan, Monty from the Delta Rigs, and those guys really sort of helped bring it to life. And that's why it sounds so good. You know, without the help from those dudes, it would sound like my dodgy bedroom recordings. But we all need help, don't we? And that's where it started.
Of course. Wow, you're from Lincoln. No way.
Mm.
The
Yeah, I
tuna
grew up there
fishing.
till I was about 18 or 19 years old, and then I moved to Perth, and then I moved to your hometown of Scum Valley for about 13 years.
Yeah, right. Wow. Mate, what was that like growing up there? I mean, Lincoln is most famous for the tuna fishing industry. It's down there in South Oz. There's some pretty good waves around there too if you game and willing to roll the dice with the fucking prehistoric megalodons that patrol the joint.
Oh, growing up, when you're a kid, you don't think about it, do you? You'll surf anything, you'll surf anywhere. As when I go back there now, I'm like, how do you do it? You know, I just look down these cliffs into these fucking dark water, dark clouds, and I'm like, nah, not for me. I'm a 40-year-old dad. I've got better things to do with myself, so I'll just find a green beach break somewhere where you can see the beasts coming, and that's me.
Yeah. Any interactions down there?
Yeah, we'd seen a few. Seen a couple surfing, and then I had one come up really close to me in a little rowboat once in Port Lincoln itself. So that's the closest I'd ever seen one close up, and it was a fucking pretty scary shit.
Holy shit, in a rowboat. That's so Jaws related. Do you reckon the thing could have just taken a fucking bite out of it and sunk you?
Oh, easily. Easily. Lincoln's great though. Sounds like you've been there. Good waves. Like you said, you got to know where to look. It's a really small town. There's only so long I sort of envisage myself being there, and you got to spread your wings, don't you? And move around just like you did. You probably didn't want to end up living in Bondi forever.
Oh, mate, I fucking loathe the joint growing up. Hey, it was an improvement from Camperdown and Drummoyne, the full Big Smoke. But by the time I was 15, I had a gutful. I was just like, what is this place? Like, it's a fucking straight hander, and it's always busy, and there was just no respite from the crowds. I was kind of couldn't wait to get out of there, but mate, still a very different place to somewhere like Port Lincoln, mate. What you were just saying there, one of the things I have been there many times, and for our listeners who might not have been, if you travel east of Lincoln, you're hitting some of the harshest country in this country, the harshest inhabited country anyway. Your Wyallas, your Port Augustas, it's red earth, it's iron ore mining or whatever they're mining out there, and these crazy, almost Star Wars-esque terminals where they're loading up the resources. Like, how wild is that stretch of Australia?
There's a beef song called In the Blood, actually, and that describes that drive from Lincoln to Adelaide. It's an 8-hour drive, believe it or not, but it is so close. It's a 30-minute flight, but you've got to go up to the gutter, Port Augusta, for the listeners that don't know what I'm talking about. And often people get Port Lincoln and Port Augusta confused, but they are two totally fucking different joints. We're talking Byron to fucking Kempsey, and like you said, it's a vast disparity between the two, and that's only a 3-hour drive from Iron Knob, the sexiest named town in the world, down to Port Lincoln.
Yeah, mate. There's no mistaking where you are in the world when you drive from Adelaide to Port Lincoln. That stretch is as iconic as anywhere in this country. It's as iconic as Uluru and I don't know, the Sydney Harbour Bridge, but for different reasons. It's just harsh country, mate. Fucking hell. And the cops, when you got those interstate plates. They're just all over you like a rash, just fucking pulling you over, emptying the contents of your car on the side of the road, fucking looking for a
Ah,
roach or something to sting you with. And you drive past the prison in, I think it's Augusta,
you do.
heading west. So it's all there in your face. And yeah, obviously like a big Indigenous community there. And there's some serious tension between the white and black communities there, kind of really harks back to, the bad old years of Australian politics and culture in the 80s. But out of that period, also a lot of good came, and out of that tension, a lot of good came. A couple of all-time pub rock bands, one that you mentioned, Midnight Oil, very much bored in on these disparities and these issues that you see in Port Lincoln to Augusta. The Warumpi Band, mate,
Yes.
I believe the Warumpi Band is from the center of Australia, right? Around the Alice and that kind of zone. And I guess
I believe so. Yep.
that's the traffic. Like a lot of the crew down in Augusta, a lot of the Indigenous crew are like, making their way back and forth between the Alice and down to Augusta. And yeah, it's all happening. There's a lot of inspiration to draw on for sure.
Yeah, like you said, you can look at it as that town and that area, APY lands and all of that, as rough and uninhabitable and not somewhere you would exactly want to live. But if you want to get inspiration for writing Aussie pub music, or go and live somewhere a little bit more uncomfortable and get out of your comfort zone, it's the perfect spot for you.
And poverty and kind of the lower end of the working class is what everyone seems to have in common out there. It's not like rich whites and poor blacks. It's like everyone's pretty bat the speck in that part of the world. And, that's where you get the characters. Just like I was saying with Wardell here, it's, people aren't bunging it on. It's like, it's so real. And yeah, there's just something about that, man. I don't know. Like, I love that in a sense. Like, it takes hardship to kind of make those people, it takes character building events and character building places to make people like that. But that is the essence of this joint. It's those people. And, you don't see them in the media. You don't see them on TV shows or necessarily even fronting bands. These are the people who are just kind of forgotten, eking out existences in the margins of the country, but there's a lot of them.
I think when people there was a bit of confusion with the band, and because we've been in Bondi for so long, I think the story, it was a bit conflicting in that, why are you writing about these battlers, these strugglers, this Aussie pub music when you live in Bondi, and I think it's me writing about my upbringing and my formative years. It's really all sort of just drawing on those past experiences. So I think, and now that we've moved to Perth and WA, you see a lot more of that kind of lower socioeconomic living. And to tell you the truth, it's really refreshing to be out of Bondi and getting back to the roots of the beefs.
Yeah, that's interesting, man. That's I see the connection now. I didn't know that myself, that you're from Lincoln and that part of the world, and it all makes a lot more sense now. The sound and the aesthetic and the whole vibe of your band. I can see it. Man, I guess Midnight Oil you mentioned too. I mean, far out. Talk to us about them. Like, what a band, man. Obviously they kind of politicized Bogans. That's the way I see them. Like, their music was amazing. It was undeniable. I've seen them a couple of times in my life, and they essentially brought like really heavy topical information to the Bogan beer swilling masses, who it turns out are super receptive to all of that. This country, it's the workers' paradise. It's the whole ethos of this joint is Sticking It Up the Man, which was for a long time, the British aristocracy. This joint was run like a dictatorship, and they divided and conquered us, pitting blacks against whites, and a lot of people took the bait. But a band like Midnight Oil brought us back together again. It galvanized this country through music. I mean, fuck, what an outfit. How big of an imprint did they leave on you?
Yeah, I guess they gave a voice, and this is just to sort of back up what you were saying before. They gave a voice to the battlers of Australia, and back in the day, I guess there was a lot more battlers than what there is now. Our population's exploded, and people are making a lot more money. More people are living in the bigger cities, and but back then there wasn't as many bands, and there wasn't as many bands that were voices for the working class people of our country. And we didn't have a choice whether Midnight Oil got big or not. They were just so forceful. They were just such a force that they were good music, and they had something to say. And we didn't have a choice whether we liked them or not. They were just there in your face.
Yeah, I love when bands are undeniable. I love when anyone's undeniable. They trust in their work ethic and their talent and their mission and journey in life, and they just go all in on it. There's nothing I respect more than that. And the Oils were definitely that. And I guess they were also from a period when, this is before the internet, and this is the golden age of pub rock. This is when you could go to fucking Bankstown racetrack and see Red Gum and Midnight Oil and In Excess and fucking I don't know, Skyhooks, all on the same bill for $5. And like there was nowhere for these bands to go. That they could only really play together and tour around Australia until they got to a certain level, and they could try to make it in America or Europe. But we were blessed in that period to have such an abundance of world-class bands. And I always think of it as like, I think it's Charles Darwin's theory of convergent evolution. So like he has this theory, and I guess the Galapagos Islands is the perfect example. It's in a biological sense where you have these remote places and everything like interbreeds on that remote place because they got nothing else to breed with. And it just creates these ultra colorful, crazy, super unique specimens. And I see kind of Australian pub rock in the 80s as kind of like the musical equivalent of that.
I liked where that analogy went, Smitty. You nearly lost me for a sec, but I'm pretty sure you brought it back.
And man, talk to us about collaborating with Matt Corby. Like, fuck, that guy is, I don't know. Our international listeners won't have heard of him, and a lot of our Australian listeners might have forgotten about him. But that guy's a freakish talent, isn't he?
Oh man, but you say that, and then he's doing a tour of the States at the moment, and it's sold out instantly. So he must have a couple of listeners over there. Matt probably could have been a little bit bigger if he'd have kept down that road of sort of more popular music. He's a pretty down to earth kind of shy character, and I think being on that show kind of scared him off of the limelight a little bit. But his talent definitely didn't hermit. It was just his personality that did, and he's brought out some amazing albums, including one that came out today. It was released today, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be Triple J's album of the week next week.
Amazing.
Worth a listen. Yeah. I was friends with his manager a long time ago, and when Matt was touring Australia, they got me along to just do an acoustic set before his shows, and so that's how we kind of got to know each other. And then I played him these Beefs demos, and he's like, mate, this is fucking awesome. And that sort of gave me the confidence to get it started. And he recorded the first EP with country member Jellyfish, Rubber Arm, and Shins Up, Tins Up on it. So that was really a bit of a kickstart for me. That was awesome.
So sick. Yeah, I guess he come through whatever it was, one of those The Voice or Australian Idol or one of those kind of talent search shows. And then I understand there was some controversy with the label or whatever, but I actually have a family member who went down that same pathway. I won't say her name, but she's fucking pretty huge. And yeah, it's interesting what record labels try to push you into doing once you come out the backside of those shows. And it's yeah, I'm not surprised what happened, and he kind of disappeared from view for a while. And I'm so frothing that he's back and putting out the kind of music he wants to put out, as opposed to the kind that the record labels want to put out. He had that amazing track on Spirit of Akasha.
Yeah, he did.
The
Yeah,
Andrew
yeah.
Kidman film.
Yep. He was living in Bondi at the time, and we had this spare apartment down on Campbell Parade, and Matt rented that off of us for a few months and set up this recording studio in there with mattresses and fucking sheets hanging up on the walls. But he recorded that song there, and I remember hearing it, just going, that thing is fucking, that was him to a T, you know. And I think, talking about labels and them wanting you to fit in this pigeonhole, this album that he just did then, and I don't know if this is top secret information, but who gives a fuck? This album is the last album that he got under contract with a big record label, and he started his own label called Rainbow Valley Records. And so I'm pretty sure any future albums that he does from now on in will be a little bit different, because he doesn't have to answer to anyone anymore. And I'm pretty fucking excited to see what he comes out with now that he's fucking out of chains.
Yeah. Oh man, that's great. That's something really exciting for everyone. He's a freakish talent. That song from Spirit of Akasha, which I will play in this episode, that's like an instant classic. Like I feel like the Rolling Stones or someone could have written that. Like I feel like it could be from any era, and the moment you hear it, you're like wow. Like I was so tripped out that he had made that song. Like obviously those talent search shows just don't really give you that good of an indication of the full range of an artist and you know, all the various handles on instruments and sounds and their voice that they've got.
I remember what happened. The producers of that film and that compilation came to him and obviously wanted him to tailor a song to that production, right? And I think when an artist is given an idea, it's like if somebody was to ask me to write a song for a fucking surf movie and they would show me the visuals first. It's so much easier to write a song based on what you've seen, or he had the previous example of the original Morning of the Earth, you know. And that song could have been fucking fitted into the first movie
fully,
couldn't it?
Yeah.
And so that's what happened there. He had the inspiration. It's not like he was just fucking, it's like me going to you, hey, write me a fucking news article, and you're like, on what? And I'm like, anything you want. But it's so much harder. But if I was to say, hey, write me an article about fucking red-tailed black cockatoos, you know, you've got a starting point.
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah, wow, I didn't know it developed like that, but that was how that film was made and the soundtrack was composed. I think Mickey Smith was given a similar edict by Kidman and produced a fucking insane score and compilation of footage. It's worth a rewatch. Spirit of Akasha.
They toured it. They fucking toured it. And I went and saw it at the Opera House in Sydney, and it was fucking phenomenal. All the different bands played that night. It was wild.
Yeah, I think I was there. I remember seeing Pond playing in the Opera House going fully ham. It's pretty amusing.
They're great, aren't they?
They're so good. That was early days for them too. They were a full freak show.
That Nick guy is an absolute freak.
God. Very funny, very weird, but sounded amazing. And yeah, you mentioned, you know, making music for surf films. You went the other way where you'd made a track and it was picked up by John John Florence and his crew and put in Maps of Home in what is probably the best section in that film. Just John going fucking warp speed at Haleiwa doing crazy carves and getting stand tools, the most psycho combos you've ever seen. Mate, talk to us about how that came about and how exhilarating that was for you.
Oh, fuck. A mate of mine, Mitchy from Life Without Andy, who are big supporters of the Beefs. I'm sure you know Mitch.
Yep.
he was mates with Eric, who's John John's producer, and just he put in a good word, and he said, mate, if you've got any spare clips that you need music for, hit Sammy up. And so Eric did. And they were in Newcastle at the time, and Eric called and said, oh, we want to use this song in some waves up in Newey. And John said it looked like shit. It was like knee-high grovelers. And he's like, oh, I love that song so much, because I think they'd all been listening to it together in a house up there. And John said, nah, let's save it for this Maps of Home we've got coming up. And so I watched it, and I'm just like, fucking, when's this fucking song going to come on? And how's the first scene of that movie is just John riding fucking that 20-foot glassy left with Slater in the channel, and fucking some orchestral violin or some shit was playing. But it worked. And then all of a sudden it's Jack, Nathan, John in the car park, and fucking boom, John just does a big hack to the opening fucking chord of Red Bellied, and I'm like, yes, this is it. And it really, it made you understand the song a lot better, didn't it? Seeing it on that backdrop.
Yeah, 100%. It hit so hard, man. And it was actually a source of major kind of cultural pride to hear one of our totem animals represented by a Hawaiian in a, global surf flick. I was like, fucking oath, like, this is classic. This is like, ain't Red Bellied Black Snakes anywhere else on the planet as far as I know. And there ain't music that sounds like that coming out of anywhere else in the planet as far as I know.
It definitely kicked the song off. Like you look at it compared to the other Beef songs on Spotify, it's got a lot more listens. But it also, when you go onto Instagram now, there's hundreds and hundreds of people that have used it on clips, and it's almost just become the go-to for fucking adventure sports. And I've been hit up by North Face and Toyota, and some beer brands, and all sorts of people wanting to use the music. So yeah, without John, the Beefs wouldn't be where they are. So I'm fucking super grateful for that. But and super excited to. We've got an album coming up in the middle of the year to see what those songs do, and really tailor the music to that market, because that's where it's at for me. I don't give a fuck about the money side of it. I want my music to be in films that were as good as Bunyip Dreaming, Green Iguana, and fucking Maps of Home.
I love it, man. Yeah, and in an age of globalization and mainstream music, when even Triple J and a lot of Australian bands have adopted a kind of indie pop formula, fuck, it's refreshing to hear bands that are unmistakably Australian. Yourself, King Stingray, these kinds of bands, like, they hark back to that golden age of Australian pub rock, and we need that, man. We can't lose that, because it can be lost. You can lose your kind of national character in the globalized culture.
Well, fuck yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. Like, it's up to our youths and our kids, and thankfully kids do like the Beefs, they like the Chats, they like
Amel and the
King
Sniffers.
Stingray,
Yeah.
Amel. Yeah, kids do like them, which is great for us, because then it gives us this audience of kids from 15 to fucking 60.
Yeah.
And that's really, really powerful. And we need to harness the culture, like you were saying, and it almost comes back to that warped analogy of Darwin and, can't remember what it was, Galapagos Islands or something.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just trying to give some credit.
No, it's a good theory. Yeah, 100%, man. Yeah, it's a crazy idea that we can lose parts of our identities. The world becomes a more connected place, and I just feel like that's a bit of a sad thing. You don't want that. Like, I'm not saying globalization's necessarily bad or anything, but you want to retain those regional identities, and music and literature and stuff like that is where it lives, and podcasts, I guess, to a degree now as well. But yeah, man, don't let them water you down. It's super interesting too. Like, just going back to your story, going from Lincoln and then eventually ended up in the eastern suburbs, where you met with Kieran J. Callanan, who I believe was pretty instrumental in putting that track together, Red Bellied Black Snake, and Julian Sudek, a couple of guys who are like full on, like they're very polished, very studio savvy musicians who don't immediately scream gritty pub rock to me, but it's that combination of talents and stories and journeys that was able to make Red Bellied Black Snake, which I find fascinating. And like, it doesn't matter in Australia what kind of culture or class you come from, like that pub rock lineage is pretty well inescapable. Like you can't have grown up in this country without having heard Barnsey, Midnight Oil, In Excess, etc., etc. So yeah, talk to us about their input in that track and just what they brought to the Beefs.
Good question. Great observations. I met Julian just around the traps and Kieran a little bit later on, because those two grew up together on the Northern Beaches. So they had worked together, played music together since they were fucking 10 years old, right? And that's probably something a lot of people don't know. So their synergy in the studio together is just fucking second to none. They just don't even have to look at each other. They're just feeling it out. When I bought them the demo, they obviously liked it from the get-go, but they added this extra oomph and beat to it. And I love dance music. I love all music, but I like the monotony and the heaviness of a lot of kind of more electronic tunes. And they almost added this sort of electronic element to it. And I was scared at the start. I'm like, whoa, what the fuck's happening here, And then the more we got down the track and Kieran started doing his wily fucking guitar over the top with his thousands of Boss pedals. And I also learned, after getting to know Kieran in the studio, that his dad was in a really seminal Australian band called the Radiators. And it all started making sense. And I'm like, I was similar to you, where I was like, how is this pub rock music coming out of the most affluent fucking suburb in Australia? It's almost a bit of a dichotomy, isn't it, really? But the stories all made sense and it just works.
Man, it works. Fuck, it works. I mean, yeah, I think that's one of the forgotten aspects of Kieran J. Callanan, amidst the freak show that he is, playing gigs in like cross-dressing in kilts and I don't know, like fucking, what are they, crocheted see-through like tops and fucking, what do you call those?
He's a good mate of mine, but he's a fucking freak.
He's a freak, dude. He's as fruity as they come. He's a fucking
I was at the tackle
up.
shack at the fucking 12 o'clock at night after Splendor once, watching him swing off the rafters in a kilt with his tackle just fucking getting shacked.
Yeah. Are you even from Sydney if you haven't seen Kieran J. Callanan's dick at a show?
No, you're not. You're not.
But
it hasn't really helped his causes with getting into the mainstream. Not that he really gives a fuck, but I don't reckon Triple J are touching him. Even he put out a song recently and it's phenomenal, but I just don't hear it plastered all over the J's because people are too fucking scared, aren't they, really?
Triple J's lost the plot, dude. It's the most fucking strook, vanilla, corpo, like it sucks so bad.
They've played the Beefs a couple of times, but definitely not on.
Don't say anything bad about Triple J, mate. You can't. Don't agree with me. Just stay silent on this. I'll do the teeing off, Sammy, because they can make or break musicians like no one else in this country. But
no, I agree. And like I said, they had supported us, especially on Unearthed. I never wanted to put my songs on Unearthed. I don't know why, but I have. And it is a really good channel for up and coming musos, obviously. And yes, you do have to comply. And I would be fucking stoked beyond belief if they did put Red Bellied on fucking high rotation, but I'm not holding me breath. But maybe with the album coming out, they might embrace a few of the newies.
They're just like, what they are is like a quintessential bourgeois, woke left institution now. Whereas once upon a time, they were very much more working class. They would have like working class hosts, and the humor and the accents and the language that come out of there alongside the music. It was all much more relatable. Now it's just been fully gentrified. It's unlistenable horseshit. I can't cop it. And I've known many people who've worked for that station as hosts and whatnot over the years. And, you know, like, to be honest, like, that was when I was trying to make a fist of it in the city as a journalist working for the newspapers. And these people didn't really, they didn't set me on fire, bro. They weren't of my set, my culture, my class. That's for sure. They were classical media elites. And yeah, it sucks that our national broadcaster has gone that way, where you can't, you know, do something politically incorrect, like flash your dick at a fucking stupid music awards ceremony or some shit. That's what he got into trouble for in the end, Kieran J. Cullinan. Like, that's just funny shit, man. You got, there's fucking 50 paparazzi there looking for something to happen, and he just whips up the kilt and gives him a look straight at his prong. Well played.
Well, this is even more obscure. Ariel Pink from Ariel Pink's Haunted Graffiti went to a Trump rally in the States about 6 months, a year ago, maybe. Not because he's a Trump supporter, but because he's open-minded and he wanted to fucking hear what the guy had to say, and he wanted to see what the people in the audience look like. Fair enough, you know. He got fucking rinsed for even being there. And him and Kieran are really good mates, and he features on Kieran's upcoming album. So Kieran was really bundled into Ariel Pink and his supposed beliefs. And
no way.
This is what's happening as well, you know. So people are almost scared to touch Kieran because of that.
What?
So now he's a fucking dick flashing fucking Trump supporter.
Yeah, a cross-dressing dick flashing Trump supporter. This is perfect synchronicity there. Like, that's so crazy. Ariel Pink, mate, he would have been the biggest freak in that crowd too. He's an odd cat himself, but fuck, what an artist! Holy smokes! I've copped him live, singing, I think, down there at Meredith. I believe he was reading the lyrics off a printout. He seemed a bit disheveled, but man, his recorded stuff's amazing.
My mother-in-law, we were having dinner the other night, my wife's mum, and they've got a boat that they go out to Rottnest on a lot, and my wife's sister is friends of friends with Ariel Pink, and they came out on the boat, the whole band. And Sarah's mum, she's pretty straight-laced, and they were just chaffing doobies, and fucking she had to tell him to put out the doobie on the back of the boat, which he was very he was receptive to do. But yeah, sounded pretty funny.
Oh my God. Wow, that's awkward. Excuse me, is that marijuana? I don't appreciate you smoking marijuana on my boat. Put it out, please. I don't want to get some kind of contact high. Holy shit. I've seen Reefer Madness. I've seen what it does to people.
I got to say, Schmitty, you and Vorney have been really killing it lately. You haven't come a long way, because you were good from the get-go, but you've been doing it a long time now, and I feel like it's going as strong as it ever has.
Appreciate it, mate. That's very kind of you. Yeah, it's gone from strength to strength. I think we're relishing the position that we're in of having such, you know, passionate supporters and really fulfilling an important part in the culture, both in surfing and otherwise, and being able to, you know, communicate what is essentially the kind of working class culture that you don't hear anymore. Like, you know, yeah, we're a bit crude and crass and a bit vulgar, but mate, this is all language I picked up swinging shovels with my uncle in South Sydney and playing rugby league and surfing and that. So, you know, I know that it hits. I've seen it hit hard in the flesh over my entire life, from my uncle and cousins and mates. And yeah, it's a culture that you don't get anymore in the media, because the media's been overrun by elites, and it's a piss take. And, like, you know, I worked as a journalist in the city, as I was saying, and fuck, it was mind melting. This was before Trump come out with all of that drain the swamp and the elites have taken over. Man, he was so bang on with that observation. It's wild in there, dude. It's wild. Like you have an accent or a language, and more than that, even a social matrix that you operate on when you grow up in the working or welfare class that is so incompatible with elites. Like you can't, you try, because everyone sounds different to you, you try to kind of fit in, but you can't fit in because you're just running on a different operating system. And I experienced that, and it was alienating and weird and depressing. And eventually, I got marginalized by the mainstream media just because I was telling stories and pitching stories that, they pulled on the big levers of capitalism. And this was for News Limited. I wrote for everyone, News Limited, fucking The Guardian, the Saturday paper, Vice, like so many different publications across the left and right, GQ. One of the few journalists to cross that paradigm and go on both the left and right wing sides of politics. And that was because all of my articles were class based in their what they were addressing, which was, housing affordability, commutes, like really dry shit. Gentrification, the kind of petitioning of rich and poor, like in this country where we're, the gentrification of areas and moving poor people out of their communities, and it becomes exclusively rich. So you got ghettos of the poor in Western Sydney, and you got enclaves of rich in the East. And this wasn't the way of the world when I was growing up. And I believed very much in the values of, the pub rock bands we're talking about, your Midnight Oils, Wimpy bands, et cetera, et cetera. Black fella, white fella, doesn't matter as long as you are true fella.
Good, true fella, yes.
Fucking
But you're smart enough and broad-minded enough to wake up and get the fuck out of there, make a change. You don't like it, fucking do something that you do like.
Yeah, it was a weird one, man. Well, exactly. Exactly. It was weird, like I was super poor for a while, and then I was able to,
You probably still are.
Really poor, just starting to make a bit of money finally off the pod. But yeah, that was some fucking lean years there, man. Wow, holy shit. But I wouldn't take it back, because that's the genesis of this podcast. A lot of it was just pure disgust at how media, politics, and the upper echelons of society function. And this potty is definitely a reaction to that. Because no cunt can tell me what I can or can't say on here.
Now, you guys are touring soon. Any plans to come over to the West or what?
Yeah, we'll be at Perth and Margs, man. So obviously come along if you want to play music. Do that or don't, but we'll be there, Sammy. We'd love to see you there, man. And
I'll bring the acoustic and play rubber arm. Yep, 100%.
That'd be mental, man. And before I forget, you mentioned you got an album coming out, so you got to plug that. Make sure you plug it.
Yeah, look, we've started tracking demos for it. There's about 12 songs, and we've got to get into the studio. I will probably end up going back to Sydney and working with Julian. And I'm pretty excited, and hopefully there's a lot of Beefs fans out there that are excited to hear some new music, because it's been a while between beers.
Yeah, and mate, talk to us about just some of the other surf films that your music's popped up in. I know you had a track in the Bondi Grom and Junior World Champ Grayson Hendricks's kind of big Aussie coastal mission, but what other surf sections can we cop some of your tunes in?
Fuck, it's been a lot, eh? I know Brett Bircher ages ago put a couple of tracks in something that him and Darcy Ward did. Leonardo Fioravanti hit me up to put Red Belly in a film of his, which I thought was kind of funny, because really that song, it's synonymous with John John, isn't it? I don't know why he would have wanted to use it.
Yeah, that caused a bit of a stir. But I think people are asking, can you even do that? Can you rip off a song and a section that iconic and put it on your own?
Fuck. Oh, who was I speaking to about it? Someone was fucking furious. Stace Galbraith fucking bailed me up in a pub near Byron, and he's just fucking ropeable, eh? He's like, he fucking can't do that. I mean, what's an example of it? It's like, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's,
I'm trying to think. I mean, I guess.
but it doesn't matter. It's an online fucking clip. It's not like Maps of Home was sitting in your fucking VHS stack, you know? It doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, it's like the Malachi Crunch NoFX Classic, which I think was the closer, maybe Slater's section in Momentum 2. And then like as iconic a section as you get, and then like a year later, there's fucking I don't know, like Neko Padarats putting out a surf film with the same you know, like it's not gonna comparisons are inevitable, Sammy. You set yourself up to fail.
To answer your question, I don't. Sheldon Simkus put one up of fucking Mick Fanning using a song this morning. Actually, which I was pretty stoked about. It was nice to see Mick wiggling to a bit of Country Member. But it's all clips now, Smitty, isn't it? Really, there's not many surf films. There is, I guess. If you go under Stab, there are.
No, you're right. It is clips now predominantly, and it's even like watching Maps from Home again before this interview, I was like, fuck, I haven't watched this in ages, and I forgot how jazzed I get from Red Bellied Black Snake in that section. Holy shit, like it got me so flared up. And it's a sad thing. It's just the way of the world now. We don't have shit in hard copies, whereas if we did, mate, I would have fucking worn that VHS tape out by now. It'd be broken.
Yeah, Stab really, and good on them that they've created this central hub for surf content. You just don't go anywhere else, do you? And all the vids are there. I know Noah put out a vid, Creed put out a vid. That who's the that Kale video was wild. But yeah, we watch them on our laptops and our phones, don't we?
Yeah, and once they're watched, they disappear into the glut of daily content. They're just lost in the algorithm fucking forevermore.
Yeah, do you watch them as much? Do you watch that Kale vid and then watch it again and again and again like you used to with the fucking VHS or the DVD? Probably not.
Definitely not. Like, I mean, I've got them all bookmarked, but it's like, because they're not staring me in the face beneath my TV, I just don't think about them. I forget that they exist. You know, that hard copy was an advertisement to watch this again. And it's like when I want to watch a mental surf film, I kind of get writer's block a lot of the time. I'm like, oh, and you can't remember the names of them necessarily. You know the surfers that's in it, but like Craig Anderson's another one. He's got so many crazy clips out, or like semi-feature length films, but fucked if I can remember the name of like almost any of them.
It used to be an amazing launch pad, didn't it, really, for musicians, bands to be unearthed through these surf channels. And I feel like even in Kai's videos, Kai Neville's vids, that happened. I think one of Flume's songs really sort of started to get big out of one of those vids.
True. Did not know that. That's interesting.
And Kai was great for picking the right music in his clips, wasn't he? I mean, fuck.
Yeah, he was a mad selector. And mate, talk to us about, you know, your surfing journey as well, like some of the films that left an imprint on you, and also just, I don't know, your surfing experience, when you started, where you've been with it, and how it shaped you.
My stepdad, who had the gnarly record collection, was an amazing surfer on the west coast of South Australia, and he put me on a board when I was about 3 or 4. And I was obviously addicted to it like any kid is. It's all I did. Well, I'm still addicted. I don't think that ever goes away. But it really started in Port Lincoln. We didn't really travel much. We didn't go overseas and stuff like that. So we really surfed around there. And when I moved to Perth, it was a lot closer to Bali and stuff, I suppose. And it was nice to surf some different waves around Margaret River, and then obviously to Sydney. I know you said Bondi is shit and it's a straight closeout, but you do surf a lot because it's right there, and your surfing gets better because you have to be quick. You have to be.
Oh yeah. And look, there's waves there like 364 days of the year. It's a south facing back beach, that's offshore in
100%.
Northerlies. There's always something to surf there. It's just you're dodging cunts left, right, and center, and it's pretty straight and gutless. But yeah, as you said, man, like it's always had quality surfers. Like it's I think the home of the first board riders club. And there's never been a period where there wasn't guys who absolutely ripped coming out of there. And that is exactly as for the reasons you said. It's so hard to surf. So you get on anything with a bit of face and a bit of period. And it's a lot easier.
Yeah. And look at the waves that are so close. Down at Ulladulla, even further south or north, I would often go to Central Coast or Newey or even up around your way when you knew that there was swell. And that's what I do miss, man. Like moving to Perth, there's not a lot of waves here unless you come down south. I had to drive around down near Margaret River this morning, and I couldn't even be getting into me wetty because it was pretty shit. But yeah, you got to travel down here. It's not like you're just going for a run down the beach. You gotta commit.
Yeah, it's the spot checks in that part of the world are so time consuming and frick, man. It's yeah, you got to be on it early, and you kind of got to, I don't know, like really make a firm decision because you can just drive around in circles and not even surf so often in that part of the world.
As far as the surf movies that kind of inspired me, I guess the same as any kid, it was Core, it was fucking Bunyip Dreaming, Green Iguana, all of those, the Billabong Challenge. Those vids were classic. Those McCoy vids were fucking classic because they incorporated a bit of humor and a bit of acting and
a bit of pub rock
graphics and a bit of pub rock.
Plenty of pub rock.
No shit.
Yeah.
If Jack did another movie, half as good as those ones, I'd be fucking stoked to have a song featured in there.
Yeah. Well, I think. Did he collaborate? No, I don't think he collaborated with Dion on Dark Hollow. I'm not sure, actually. He was definitely there on the night when it premiered in the Newcastle kind of opera house doing a talk. But, yeah, I know that they do talk a lot. And, I don't know. He's surely still got one left in him, Jack. I know that his health's not great at the moment, and shout out to Jack if he's listening, mate. I wish you all the best, brother. You're an absolute cultural icon. Oh,
fucking Core Lord.
Big time. Yeah, it really is. I don't know if anyone's left a larger imprint on surf celluloid than Jack McCoy, and an absolute gent of a dude. But man, it'd be great to see him just at least be like an EP, or cast his eyes across a contemporary surf film, much in the same way I guess Kieran or Corby had an input in your music, just add a bit of spice here and there.
100%. I agree. Bro, so stoked to have been invited onto the show, or even remotely considered a Core Lord. And just looking at some of the previous episodes you've done with some of the other guys, Gudang, Sterling. Oh, yeah, an absolute honor, man. And you guys are fucking killing it. And I'm pretty keen to see you over here when you come over.
Legend, Sammy. Mate, thanks so much for your time. And, we'll definitely link up in the West for those shows, and probably get you up on the panel or something. We'll involve you somehow. We'll talk. Let's talk.
Love to. On your Smeevy.
On your brother. Will do, man. See you, man.
See ya.